Okay, so get this. We're diving deep today into the world of rare earth elements.
Rare earth elements.
They've been kind of all over the news lately, haven't they, Game? Sparking international deals and controversies even.
Yeah.
Remember that whole Oval Office thing a while back?
Oh, yeah.
It's easy to just get lost in the headlines with all this stuff, but trust me, there's a whole fascinating story beneath the
A
surface.
story that goes way beyond the political stuff you see in the news. It touches on technology, the environment, even the choices we make every day as consumers.
I like that. Okay, so before we go any further, let's break this down.
Sure.
What exactly are rare earth elements? The name kind of sounds like something straight out of like a sci-fi movie or something.
Yeah, it does sound a little bit futuristic, right?
Yeah.
Well, they're basically a group of 17 elements on the periodic table,
Okay.
and 15 of those are metals. But here's the thing. They're not actually as rare as their name might suggest.
Yeah, right? I was surprised to learn that one of them, yttrium, is actually more common than copper.
It is.
So if they're not so rare, why are all these powerful countries, practically wrestling over them?
Well, it's because they have these unique magnetic and luminescent properties.
Okay.
And these properties are absolutely crucial in modern technology we use today.
Mm-hmm.
And we think everything from the tiny magnets in your electric toothbrush to the powerful components in wind turbines and even fighter jets.
Hold on, my electric toothbrush has rare earth elements in it.
It does.
Really?
Yeah, those tiny but really powerful neodymium magnets
Wow.
are what allow your toothbrush to generate that high-speed vibration that it does. And they're in a ton of other devices that we use every single day.
I had no idea. I just thought they buzzed or something.
Yeah, well, it's a little more complicated than that.
Okay, so we've established that these elements are basically in practically everything tech-related,
Pretty much.
which makes me wonder, what's the catch? There's got to be a downside to all of this, right?
Yeah, the downside is the extraction process.
Yeah.
It can be incredibly messy, expensive, and it can be really environmentally damaging.
Yeah, I have heard whispers about some, pretty serious environmental concerns. I'm ready to unpack that.
Yeah, okay. So to extract these elements, you have to dig deep,
Yeah.
often over 100 meters into the earth. And that disrupts underground water systems
Okay.
and requires the use of highly toxic solvents like sulfuric acid to actually separate the elements from everything else.
Okay, so we're talking about disrupting water tables and using highly corrosive chemicals. That's already pretty alarming, but I know there's more to the environmental impact, right?
Yeah, unfortunately there is. On top of those issues, for every ton of rare earth element that you extract,
Okay.
you produce a ton of radioactive
A
waste.
ton.
A ton, yeah. And this waste can contain thorium and uranium. And if it's not managed properly, it can contaminate soil and water. And it can pose some serious long-term risks to human health and the ecosystems around the mines.
A ton of radioactive waste. That's a huge red flag. No wonder some countries are hesitant to mine these elements domestically, even if they have reserves.
It's a big concern for a lot of countries.
Mhm.
The U.S., for example, possesses 15% of the world's known reserves,
Wow.
but produces very little domestically.
So if the U.S. isn't a major player in all of this, who is? Where are most of these elements actually coming from?
Well, currently, China dominates global production, accounting for roughly 44% of the world's supply.
Yeah, I've read about that massive rare earth mine in China, Baotou, I think it is.
Yeah?
The one they call China's Mongol Ring. It's reportedly responsible for something like 40% of the world's total production. I mean, that level of concentrated production has got to have a significant impact, doesn't it?
Oh, it absolutely does. While China's willingness to extract these elements has given them a huge strategic advantage in the global market, it's definitely come at a steep environmental cost. The area around Baotou has been heavily polluted, and there are a lot of ongoing concerns about the long-term health consequences for the people that live there.
Wow, that raises some really, serious ethical questions about this whole thing. The trade-off between technological advancement and protecting the environment.
It does. It really forces us to confront the question of whether our reliance on these elements is even worth the environmental and social costs.
So to understand how we even got to this point, I think it would be helpful to kind of step back and look at the history of rare earth elements.
Okay.
When were they first discovered? When did all of this start?
The journey begins back in 1787
Wow.
with a Swedish chemist named Axel Arius.
Okay.
He stumbled upon the first rare earth element,
Yeah.
yttrium, while he was analyzing this peculiar black rock.
1787, that's a lot earlier than I would have guessed. So what happened next? Were these elements like an instant sensation?
Not really. For a long time, rare earth elements were largely overlooked. Their applications were limited, and they weren't really considered all that valuable. They were more of a scientific curiosity than a strategic resource back then.
So what changed? When did these elements go from being, like a footnote in chemistry textbooks to the focus of international deals and political maneuvering?
Well, the turning point was the Manhattan Project in the 1940s.
Ah, the Manhattan Project. The top secret effort to develop the atomic bomb. That makes sense.
Yeah, it was a really pivotal moment. Scientists involved in the Manhattan Project discovered that rare earth elements had these unique properties
Okay.
that made them incredibly valuable for a bunch of technological applications, including, surprisingly, the development of nuclear weapons.
What kind of properties made them useful for something as, powerful and destructive as a nuclear weapon?
Well, it turns out that some rare earth elements like gadolinium have an incredible ability to absorb neutrons,
Okay.
and this made them really crucial in controlling nuclear chain reactions, which is a key aspect of developing a functional atomic bomb.
So these seemingly obscure elements played a role in one of the most, significant technological developments of the 20th century.
They did.
And I'm guessing it wasn't just the U.S. that recognized their potential.
Absolutely not. In 1948, after Mao Zedong came to power in China,
Okay.
he also recognized the strategic importance of rare earths and made the development of these mines a national priority.
Okay.
So this early focus on production, coupled with China's vast reserves, laid the foundation for their eventual dominance in the global market.
And as we've talked about, that dominance has come with a significant environmental price tag.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
The pursuit of progress often comes with these unintended consequences.
Okay, so let's fast forward to the present fall. China's the leading producer of rare earth elements.
Right.
And all these other countries are kind of scrambling to secure their own supplies. This brings us back to what we were talking about earlier with, all those headlines about international deals.
Right.
And even former President Trump's interest in Greenland and Ukraine as potential sources of rare earth elements.
Yes, and that's a perfect example of how these elements have become so entangled in geopolitics.
Mm-hmm.
Trump's focus on countries with high concentrations of rare earths and, let's just say, less stringent environmental regulations. Right.
Really highlights the complex interplay between resource scarcity, national interests, and the environment.
It seems like he was looking for a, quick and easy solution.
Uh-huh.
A way to secure access to these resources without having to grapple with all the environmental challenges or the complexities of international diplomacy.
That's one way to interpret it. But establishing new mines isn't like flipping a switch.
Right.
It can take up to 10 years to develop a production chain as sophisticated as the one that China has in Baotou.
Wow.
And even then, there are those inevitable environmental impacts and the potential for public resistance that you have to consider.
It sounds like a global game of chess,
Yeah.
with countries trying to anticipate each other's moves and secure their own advantage, even if it means overlooking the environmental consequences or, potentially destabilizing the entire market. Yeah, that's a very astute observation.
Yeah.
And it really underscores the fact that this whole rare earth element situation is about so much more than just digging up rocks. It's about technology. It's about geopolitics. It's about the environment. And it's about the choices that we make as consumers every day.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. We've covered the history, the extraction process, the environmental concerns, and the global power dynamics. And we haven't even touched on the economics of it all.
That's right. There's a whole other layer to this story, one that's just as fascinating and complex as everything we've discussed so far.
Well, in that case, I think it's time to shift gears and delve into the economic side of rare earth elements.
Okay.
When we come back, we'll explore the market forces, the supply chains, and what the future might hold for these really critical resources.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we've talked about the environmental and geopolitical, factors surrounding rare earth elements.
Right.
But now I'm kind of curious about the economic side of things.
Sure.
For a long time, it seemed like buying from China was just the easiest and cheapest option.
Even with all those environmental red flags we talked about.
Yeah.
Did that create any, vulnerabilities for other countries?
It definitely did. Yeah. Imagine a world where your access to these, essential tech ingredients hinges on the decisions of a single country.
Right.
That's a recipe for potential instability.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what happened in 2011.
What happened in 2011?
Well, China decided to, significantly reduce its rare earth exports.
Oh, wow. What triggered that decision? Was it like purely an economic move, or was there something else going on?
It was a bunch of factors, really. On the one hand, you had these mounting concerns within China about the environmental damage that was being caused by rare earth mining.
Yeah, okay.
They were starting to, really feel the consequences of their own production boom.
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh.
It's hard to ignore those consequences when they're happening, in your own backyard.
Exactly. And at the same time, you also had these escalating trade tensions between China and other countries.
So this export reduction kind of became a strategic lever for them, a way to kind of exert their influence on the global market.
So what happened when China, like, tightened its grip on the rare earth supply?
Well, essentially chaos. The global tech industry went into a frenzy.
Really?
Prices for rare earth elements skyrocketed.
Wow.
And companies that relied heavily on these materials were left scrambling to find, alternative sources.
It was a stark wake-up call
Yeah.
to the vulnerability of global supply chains.
It's like suddenly realizing that the foundation of your entire industry is built on kind of shaky ground.
Exactly. And that wake-up call reverberated across the globe, particularly in the U.S.
Okay.
It led to this renewed push to diversify supply chains
Okay.
and try to lessen the dependence on a single supplier for these critical materials.
Speaking of the U.S., we mentioned earlier that they have a relatively small amount of domestic rare earth production,
Right.
concentrated mainly in California.
Yeah.
Why is that? Considering they possess a significant portion of the world's reserves. It's a really complex equation. Right. Part of it boils down to environmental concerns and public perception.
Okay.
The U.S. has, these stringent environmental regulations,
Mm-hmm.
which can make establishing new mines a really lengthy and expensive process.
Right.
And let's be honest, no one wants a toxic waste dump in their backyard.
Yeah, I get it. It's a classic NIMBY situation, not in my backyard.
Exactly. But it's not just about regulations and local opposition.
Huh.
There's also, economic considerations.
Yeah.
Developing new mines. And the refining capacity requires a significant investment.
Sure.
And given the volatile nature of the rare earth market, there's no guarantee of a return on that investment.
So it's kind of like a balancing act
Yeah.
between economic interests, environmental concerns, and public perception.
Exactly. It's a challenge that countries all over the world are grappling with.
Mm.
How do we secure access to these critical resources while also mitigating the environmental and social costs?
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It
Yeah.
feels like we're kind of at a crossroads with all of this.
I think we are. And I think it's important to remember that this isn't just a challenge for governments and corporations.
Right.
It's a challenge for all of us as consumers.
Okay.
We have a role to play in shaping the future of rare earth elements and their impact on the planet.
That's a powerful statement. I'm ready to explore that further. What can we as individuals actually do to make a difference in this, kind of complex landscape?
Well, I think the first step is awareness.
Okay.
Do we even know where the materials in our devices come from? Have we considered the environmental and social costs that are associated with, extracting them?
Yeah.
Are we even aware of the potential consequences of our own consumption habits?
Those are tough questions to ask ourselves, honestly. It's easy to get caught up in the convenience and the allure of, new technology without thinking about the bigger picture.
Yeah, it is. But the choices that we make do matter.
Okay.
We can start by being more conscious consumers.
Okay.
Do we really need the latest gadget?
Right.
Or can we extend the life of our existing devices through repairs and upgrades?
It's like choosing to mend a favorite shirt instead of, tossing it out for a new one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can also support companies that prioritize ethical sourcing and sustainable practices.
Okay.
Look for transparency in their supply chains. Ask questions about their commitment to environmental responsibility.
And of course, there's recycling.
Right, yeah.
It seems like a no-brainer, but we often forget about it.
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial. Making sure that our old electronics and, other products that contain rare earths are properly recycled
Right.
allows those valuable materials to be recovered and reused.
So are there specific technologies or initiatives that are focused on recycling rare earth elements? It seems like that would be a game changer in terms of, reducing our reliance on mining.
Oh, there absolutely are. Yeah.
Mhm.
Scientists and engineers are developing these innovative techniques to extract rare earth elements from discarded products.
Okay.
Even things like coal ash.
Coal ash. Really? That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's a prime example of how we can find these valuable resources in unexpected places.
Oh.
There are also initiatives to encourage manufacturers to design products with recyclability in mind,
Okay.
making it easier to recover those rare earth elements at the end of a product's life.
So it's not just about what we do with our old devices, but also about how those devices are designed in the first place.
Precisely. It's about creating this more circular economy
Okay.
where resources are used more efficiently and waste is minimized.
It's encouraging to know that there are people working on these solutions, even if the challenges seem kind of daunting at times.
They are daunting.
Yeah.
But I'm optimistic that through innovation, collaboration, and a shift in mindset, we can create a more sustainable future for rare earth elements and the technologies that rely on them.
I share your optimism. It's a fascinating and multifaceted issue, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
We have, but I think we've laid a good foundation for understanding the key issues at play.
I agree. Before we wrap up, you mentioned an interesting historical analogy earlier, something about, former President Trump's approach to securing rare earth elements and its potential consequences.
Hmm.
I'm curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's a thought-provoking comparison, and one that I think might shed light on the potential pitfalls of, prioritizing short-term gains over long-term stability.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's dive into that when we come back.
Okay, we're back, and I'm really curious about this historical analogy you mentioned. You were about to share something that connects to Trump's approach to rare earth elements, something about the potential downsides of those short-sighted deals.
Yeah, it's a comparison that might seem a little surprising at first.
Okay.
But just bear with me for a second. Think back to 1938 and the appeasement of Hitler,
Okay.
leading to the Munich Agreement.
Okay, I remember learning about that in school. It's where Britain and France basically ceded a part of Czechoslovakia to Hitler, hoping it would, prevent a larger war, a decision that, obviously backfired in a huge way.
Yeah, exactly. It
Yeah,
seemed like a
that's right.
pragmatic, solution at the time. But it really emboldened Hitler's ambitions. And a lot of people believe that it actually paved the way for World War II. So I'm seeing the parallel here. Are you suggesting that Trump's, pursuit of rare earth elements, even if it meant striking deals with countries that maybe had questionable environmental or ethical practices, could have, unintended long-term consequences?
Yeah, that's the heart of it. By prioritizing, that immediate access to these resources, potentially at the expense of, long-term stability and global cooperation, he might have inadvertently set this dangerous precedent. It's like making a deal with the devil for that short-term convenience, but risking a much steeper price down the line.
It's a sobering thought. History often feels so distant,
Yeah.
but it has a way of echoing through time,
Yeah,
reminding us that the choices we make today can have these ripple effects far into the future.
it's true. The rare earth element dilemma is a prime example of that interconnectedness you're talking about. It's not just about securing resources. It's about navigating this complex web of economic interests, environmental concerns, and ethical considerations.
So what does all of this mean for, us, the everyday consumers who rely on all this technology that, depends on these elements? It's easy to feel powerless in the face of these, kind of complex global issues.
I get that, but I think we actually have more power than we realize.
Yeah,
As consumers, we vote with our wallets every single day.
right.
We can choose to support companies that prioritize ethical sourcing, sustainable practices, and transparent supply chains.
That makes sense. Aligning our spending with our values.
Exactly. And it goes beyond just our purchasing decisions, too.
Okay.
We can advocate for policies that promote responsible rare earth mining,
Right.
that encourage recycling and innovation, and, that foster international cooperation.
Okay.
We can stay informed, engage in these conversations, and use our voices to demand a more sustainable and equitable future for everyone.
It's empowering to realize that we're not just, passive bystanders in all of this. We can actually, we have the ability to influence the narrative.
Exactly. Remember that historical analogy we talked about?
Yeah.
The lesson isn't to avoid deals or partnerships altogether. It's about approaching them with a long-term perspective, considering the potential consequences, and, prioritizing collaboration and sustainability over those short-sighted gains.
So in a nutshell, it's about being informed, making those conscious choices, and using our, collective power to shape a future where technological progress doesn't have to come at the expense of, the planet or its people.
Well said. The rare earth element story is still unfolding, and it's up to all of us to write the next chapter.
This has been a really insightful deep dive. I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of the complexities surrounding rare earth elements. What a journey.
It's been my pleasure to share this journey with you. Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about the world around us, the better equipped we are to navigate its challenges and create a brighter future.
And on that note, I want to leave our listeners with this. Imagine if your next phone upgrade came with a carbon footprint label detailing the environmental impact of its production. Would that change your purchasing decision? Something to think about as we continue to explore, this intricate world of rare earth elements and their role in shaping our technological future. Until next time, keep diving deep and stay curious.